Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our mid-season review of the first season of Young Justice. And now that we're about halfway through the season, I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of cover some of the big plot points, story, character arcs, and predictions that I have going into the second half of season one. Now, originally, I was going to wait until the end of season one and do a full-on review for the whole season, but I'm sure you guys can understand it's better for us to do it this way because this is a 26 episode season, and in the first 13 episodes of season one, a lot has happened, and we've seen our characters go through some dramatic changes. We've seen a plot that is bigger than anything I was expecting begin to unfold. And personally, I have a lot of theories that I want to share with you in this video. So in this video, some of the main points I want to cover, because I want to try to keep this as succinct as possible, include we want to talk about the story. We've had some big plot points happen. I have some big predictions on where I think the story is going to end at the end of season one. So I want to touch on those things. We've also seen some significant character development, some interesting character arcs for each of some of the main characters of this show. So those are things I want to touch on and kind of where I see those characters going at the end of season one. Then thirdly, we'll talk about some of the things that have really stood out to me this season, some of the things that I've just truly enjoyed, and there's a lot of them, so I'll try to just pick a few. And last but not least, one of the final things I want to touch on is the future of season one. As someone that's never seen this show, where do I think this show is going to go in the last 13 episodes? I'm going to try not to make this video too long, but if you guys enjoy the content, you already know what to do. Drop a like on this video, subscribe if you're new here, and comment down below within the first half, the first 13 episodes of season one, what has been your favorite moment? I would love to know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments, and I'll be sure to let you know mine as well. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to our mid-season review of Young Justice. All right, so let's start by talking about the story. Now, my general impressions of this story in the beginning, and I'll admit to this, were wrong. I originally thought that this story was going to be kind of linear, right? You know, we see a bunch of heroes, they're joining forces against the forces of evil to stop the big bad, and that's it. But I feel like there are so many, nuanced layers that these characters, have within themselves, they provide to the show, that I think makes the overall plot just feel that much more interesting. A brief overview, obviously a lot has happened in the first 13 episodes, and obviously one of the biggest things that I think is occurring is this mysterious, enigmatic figure, this entity, this society, whatever you want to call it, known as the Light. They are trying to do something, build something, create something. I don't know. I feel like they're gonna end up doing some sort of invasion. Anyway, they're the bad guys. They want to do something, and that something throughout at least the first 13 episodes or so has slowly but surely been building. And that's what I love so much about this story, is I feel like, with a season that's 26 episodes, it feels like it's very easy. And this is something I used to see in a lot of shows way back when. It's something, in the Arrowverse era, CW days, we would see a lot of shows kind of dragging out their 26, 27 episode seasons. So when I went into this show and saw that the first season was 26 episodes and that I was going to be doing, kind of a watch party for each episode, I thought I was crazy. But one of the big things that I really worried about with this season being 26 episodes was really the fact that I was concerned that there was going to be a lot of fillers, that there were going to be episodes that didn't really tie to the story. They had no impact on the overall character progression, and they were just there to kind of save space. The team goes on some random adventure, does something random, and I couldn't have been more wrong about that. And I'm glad that I was wrong about that, because every episode we've seen, at least in the first 13 episodes, and I know there's still a second half of this season to go, but all I can say is, within the first half of this season, this show has definitely felt like every episode connects. Every episode is just, it's a building block to the greater whole of a season. And I know that I may sound like I'm surprised in saying that, but you'd be surprised how many shows come out now that don't have that capacity. They don't have that character progression, and it feels like the story kind of builds up and then kind of comes to a screeching halt within the second half, kind of the midway through the season, and then builds up and completely explodes in the last 4 or 5 episodes. And I've seen a lot of shows like that, so it's nice to go into the first 13 episodes of season one and feel like every episode is slowly but surely building up, and it's not doing so in a way that's too slow, right? I feel like everything is happening at a natural progression of where you would want it to happen, how you would want it to happen, and it still finds a way to keep you engaged in the characters and in the greater whole of the story, while still kind of being on your toes and not exactly knowing what the hell is happening. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm lost with the show, but I still have so many questions. And, they're questions that I know will get answered at some point through the second half. But going into the first half, like, I continue to have this ongoing list of questions about certain characters, their motivations, what's going to happen with them, who are the light, what are they after, what do they want? And, I'm excited to kind of go into the second half, still not having answers to those questions. Because again, I feel like I see a lot of shows that give away too much of the plot too soon and then leave a lot left to be desired, when you look at the second half of the season or movie or whatever it is. So overall, guys, when it comes to the story, I will say that I'm curious about the light, not exactly sure what they want. I almost feel like when we saw the episode and they were talking about, someone bringing in, items through a portal, it makes me feel like there's some big invasion on the way. I have no idea why. I don't know why that would be the thing, but, it feels like from what we've heard the light talk about and how we've heard them talk throughout, some of their little, outro bits, it definitely feels like they're planning a new world order kind of thing. That's just the vibe I get. So my earliest prediction, at least in terms of the story, is that there's some sort of an invasion happening, or it's going to be, some sort of an annihilation. It always ends up being one, either, right? Like with a lot of these shows, it always ends up being, the bad guys are trying to bring in a new race to enslave humanity and create a new world, or they're trying to just get rid of humanity entirely and then start from scratch. I don't know. It's always one of the two things, but annihilation always seems to be on the menu. So in my opinion, I feel like one of those two things is definitely gearing up, and I'm excited to see kind of how it progresses. One thing too I've liked about the story that I want to touch on is the fact that this show has done such a great job with building classic superhero storytelling, but also making it feel different. Like when I think about this story, at least going into the beginning, one of the things I was most concerned about was not only the pacing, but whether or not these characters would be able to stand on their own. Like for me personally, I've always been a big fan of Kid Flash, always been a big fan of Robin. So I knew that having those two characters in, I was invested. Looking from an outside perspective, it's someone that may not necessarily be as involved or as invested in the superhero genre. You see characters like Superman and Aquaman and stuff like that, and you wonder, like, can these characters compete? You got iconic characters like the Flash, and I wondered how this squad was going to be able to stand on their own and have their own unique, compelling story that ties into the Justice League, ties into those iconic characters, but they're still able to kind of do their own thing, and it feels fresh and new and fun. And I gotta say, guys, I mean, they nailed it. Like throughout the 13 episodes of this season, I have felt like these characters, I mean, in many ways, these characters have become my favorites. Yeah, Superman's cool, Aquaman's cool, but there's so much more nuance, I feel like, with these characters than I've seen with some of the classic DC characters. Like, these characters, they have so much more to balance. And I feel like in a way, whether you're, someone that's in middle school, high school, college, or even out of school, right? I think no matter what age bracket you're in, this show kind of brings you to a time that you are either in now or you've lived before. So there's a little bit of a nostalgia there as you watch these heroes, battle the forces of evil, continue to try to prove themselves to, guys and girls that have done it before, right? You look at the Black Canaries and the Supermans and the Arrows, and they're all characters that have been around the block. They know how the superhero game works. But these characters are not only trying to learn from the best, but they're trying to find a way to leave their own mark while also attending school and balancing with all these other things. And in many ways, watching this show kind of brings me back to the days of Smallville. And Smallville was it continues to be one of my favorite superhero shows, live action shows of all time, because it perfectly shows the many different layers of Superman. And it shows Superman at a time where he's just Clark Kent trying to figure out who he is, where he's from, his powers, and how he can use those powers for the greater good. And it takes a 10-year journey for him to kind of get to that point. And in many ways, you kind of feel like you grew up with that character. And so, you watch characters like this, and, for me, one of the things that I feel like I really like about superheroes is their relatability. You watch a show like this and you feel like you can relate to a lot of these characters, and you feel like you understand them in a way, even if you don't personally know them. And, that's really what I think makes them even more interesting than some of some of the older guys. All in all, guys, the story has been absolutely gas. I'm super excited to see what happens going into the second half of the season. I think it's some kind of annihilation or some sort of invasion. And one thing I really also just really quickly want to touch on is the fact that I feel like the story, I feel like the story is, it's really interesting because the heroes don't even know. So you kind of feel like you're breaking the fourth wall in the sense that you know that the bad guys are plotting, that they're scheming, but the heroes that you're watching, that you're rooting for, don't know. So it's like watching a horror movie and the main character goes down an alley and you're like, don't go down that alley. Like, you know, what are you doing? And it kind of feels like that in the sense, you know, we got our heroes, they're doing the best they can, and we're still finding them potentially walking into a trap. So there is a little bit of that anxiousness going into the second half. But again, this show has me feeling a lot more feelings than I thought I originally would for a show like this, you know, and I continue to be pleasantly surprised. So now I want to talk about each of the characters individually and what I feel like what my first impressions of them were and kind of where I hope that they'll go into the second half of season 1. So starting off with Robin, I really thought Robin, at least in the beginning, was going to be the leader. And I think in many ways it felt like that was the obvious choice, you know, of who should kind of lead this team. But one thing I found so interesting about Robin is that he kind of reminds me of Korra a little bit from The Legend of Korra. If you guys watch that show, Korra is a character that in my opinion holds immense talent, but she also has an ego and she has a wit about her that is almost, she almost knows too much for her own good. And when I see a character like Robin is also a character that has endless potential and a character that I could see kind of taking the reins and leading this team to success, but he has room to grow. Similarly to Korra, you know, these are characters that, you know, they definitely have the chops to be great, but there needs to come a level of discipline and understanding that they don't really have in the beginning. And so I kind of like the direction that they've gone with Robin's character, you know, and I think, you know, inevitably I hope that he will end up taking the reins as the leader, but at least for now it's nice to see him kind of continuing each episode to grow into that leader and that leadership role. Then you have Kid Flash, and I'm not gonna lie, you know, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, Kid Flash is one of my favorite characters. He's one of my favorite heroes. I really love him on the show, but I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just me. I feel like whoever wrote Kid Flash did not like Kid Flash, because the way that this guy just gets completely disrespected every single episode has probably been, in my opinion, the biggest stain on season 1 so far. You know, yeah, I feel like in terms of all the characters, whether it be Artemis, Megan, Superboy, Aqualad, Robin, you know, even the dog, you know, the wolf that they adopt, I feel like all of these characters have experienced some level of character progression in a positive manner. And Kid Flash is one of the ones that I feel like consistently just gets dogged. It's hard to explain, you know, and I feel like for those who have seen this show, you probably have seen it too. And it's something that I really hope to see change. Like Kid Flash is one character that I really hope to be, you know, I really hope to see him grow and become, you know, the best version of himself. But at least for now, in the first 13 episodes, it just feels like every episode I see him just getting absolutely bodied, smacked down, beat down every single episode. And I hate that for my boy. I really do. Kid Flash is one of my favorite characters, and I hate to see him just get absolutely, utterly disrespected each and every episode. So my hope for Kid Flash is that going into the second half, we see him really step up and become the best version. I say this right with a loving heart. I want Kid Flash to be the best version of himself, and I really want to see him level up and evolve and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, I don't want him to just be kind of the jester of the team who brings in the comedic humor and then doesn't really add much else. And so, you know, I hope that that's not something that they're going to stick with throughout the rest of season 1. But, you know, as someone that's a big Kid Flash fan, a big Flash fan, you know, I'm always going to root for my speedsters, and I would really love to see Kid Flash just, you know, stop getting disrespected. Next up, we got to talk about Superboy, who I would say is arguably one of the most interesting characters in the show. Obviously, the beginning of the series, we find him in a tube, you know, made from DNA, I think, from Superman. Not even sure how they got this DNA. I don't know. But, you know, yeah, it's a character that has had a lot of, I think, internal, mental, emotional struggles, you know, as he tries to find his place and figure out where he belongs. And, you know, and I feel like he really does have probably some of the greatest burdens, even over, you know, someone like Aqualad. Aqualad's the team leader, but I feel like Superboy really has some of the biggest struggles and some of the biggest hurdles to overcome as a character that, you know, kind of feels like he's in Superman's shadow, you know. And I think anybody that has felt like they've had an older sibling or, you know, a dad that was really good at one one thing or whatever, you know, it's hard not to feel like you're living in their shadow. And I think there comes this pressure to establish one's own identity and become, you know, the best version of themselves, you know, even if that means going in a completely different direction than, you know, someone like Superboy feels like Superman has, you know. I don't know. Superboy's an interesting character. I love the character progression we've seen from him so far. I feel like he's a little less angry. I wouldn't say a lot, you know. I would say he's a little less angry than he was at the beginning. You know, he still has that berserk rage mode in him. He's still got that dog in him, but at the same time, like, I think he's become a much more kind of gentle character, you know, and I think he understands a little bit more than he did, at least in the first couple episodes, that he's a character that's not perfect, he's not invulnerable, and he has a lot to learn, you know. And I think, you know, you see him every episode learning a little bit more, becoming even stronger, and becoming a real part of this team, which I think is really cool. So I'm excited to see Superboy grow. I've loved his relationship with Megan. I think Megan is a big part of his growth and his character development. So I've actually really loved seeing them together. I think she's made him a bit more softer of a character, which I think is good. You know, I think when he came out of the tube, like, your boy was a little pent up. He was a little, you know, high strung. And so to see him kind of, you know, relax a little bit, take it easy, you know, I think it's been really nice to see. Next up, we got to talk about Megan. Megan is a character that I don't know if there's really much to say about Megan. I mean, we haven't learned a lot about her, you know, since she became a member of this team, but I would say Megan's probably been one of the most consistent characters in the show. Like, Homegirl continues to put out, what did he say? One of the greatest characters in the show. I think she's got the damage, she's got the smarts. I feel like she gets him out of a lot of tough situations. Like, I feel like Megan really is the wild card in this team. You know, she's the ace in the hole. She's the character that I feel like consistently just throws down, and I love that about her. I feel like there's nothing really negative I could say about Megan. Although, you know, I would love to see a little bit more backstory on her character. You know, she's someone that kind of was brought in from you know courtesy of Martian Manhunter, but she is a character that I would love to see a little bit more about, and where her backstory is, and just a character I just want to love more about. And speaking of characters that I would love to learn a little bit more about, we have Artemis. Artemis, you know, similarly to how Megan, I think, is probably one of the most consistent characters. Then you have Artemis, who I think goes in a different direction, where she's one of the most curious characters in the show. She's a character that I think the show was kind of leading you to believe she was responsible for the leak, and we haven't really gotten that confirmed yet, you know, through the first half of this season. I hope that we get that confirmed soon, but, you know, I feel like, you know, Artemis really is a strong character, and I think she has a troubled backstory. We've gotten a little bit of her backstory. We've learned a little bit about her, and we've learned that she kind of has a troubled past. And I hope that has something to do, that if she is the leak, I hope that you know, that troubled past is primarily the reason for it, because I feel like she's a good part of the team. And I would hate to see them kind of, you know, if they do find out and she is responsible for the leak, I would hope that, you know, she finds a way to kind of, you know, finds a way to kind of, you know, make it up to the team and prove that she's with them, and that they can trust her, you know, which I think is, you know, something that's gonna, you know, if she is responsible, I think that's something that's gonna be a bit difficult for them to accept at first, but I think over time they'll come to accept that. And then you have Aqualad. Aqualad is just, he's the peak pillar of the team. I mean, I gotta say, you know, I wanted Robin to be the leader of the team in the beginning, but looking back at it now, I love the opportunity that it presented for Robin to kind of grow as a character, which I think he continues to do throughout this season. But Aqualad is a character that I think from the jump was ready for this role. And what I think is so cool is that he's not a character that feels like he deserved the role, or that he was owed the role. And I think it was really cool, you know, in that episode when we see him talk to Robin and say, I'll hold on to the role for now, but you truly are the true leader of this team. And I just think that was it was one of the moments I truly began to love Aqualad as a character, and I've never stopped loving this character. I mean, he continues to be, he's strong, he is steadfast, right? I think he's tough, but he's not Batman tough, and he's a character that I think that everybody wants to rally around, you know, everybody wants to support and be supported by. And yeah, Aqualad's just that guy, man. I mean, he really is. I loved his episode with Red Arrow, you know, and I think that, you know, he has a lot to offer this team. I think he really is one of the best, you know, members on this squad. So I'm excited to see how his character kind of grows and exactly what happens next for your leader. And then of course we have Red Arrow. I'm not going to talk too much about Red Arrow because, you know, I think you guys kind of know if you've watched the last couple episodes where I stand on this character, but, you know, Red Arrow is a character that I really like. I love that he kind of stepped out and went on his own, did his own thing, but I want him to become a part of the team. And I feel like obviously that's going to happen. I feel like it has to happen. The question is when? When will that happen? That's what I'm anxiously waiting for. And so I'm hoping that, at some point we find Red Arrow in a position where he either, needs to help the team or they ask him to help or something. He decides to stay. My prediction is that something's going to happen. Maybe, they're going to be in a situation where like they're going to have to team up. And then Red Arrow's just kind of, he's going to just stay. I don't know. That's the hope. But we'll see. Overall, I mean, Red Arrow is definitely one of my favorite characters on the squad. And I want the squad to be complete. So I'm looking forward to the day that he joins the team, and I hope that that's sooner than later. Now let's talk about my predictions. And I won't bore you guys with all the details. I have a lot of predictions, many of which that I've written down, as this show is going on, of where I think certain characters are going to go, where I think the plot is going to go. But for the sake of this video and not making it too long, I'll just stick to the plot. I think that, the light is going to reveal themselves soon, and I think it's potentially going to be probably either characters that we've never seen before, famous villains or something, or it's going to be characters that we've all seen before, which also would not surprise me. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if freaking Lex Luthor is on that squad. You know what I mean? Like that would not surprise me at all. I feel like I'm leaning towards it being characters that we've seen, because over the last 13 episodes, we've seen the light continue to be building, and it seems like they're always just one step ahead of the team. And so, it would not surprise me if the reason that they're ahead of the team is because they're people that we've seen. We've probably seen them in many of the episodes that we've seen so far. So, I'm kind of curious to see, when that will happen, if they'll reveal themselves, when they'll reveal themselves. I just hope that it's not at the end of season 1. I feel like they've been building it. And before we get to the end of the season, I would like to know who's on this secret society that we've been rumored about. What is the light? What exactly is their plan? What do they want to do? And my prediction is that we'll learn all of that relatively soon. So, that's the hope. In terms of some of the characters, I don't know if Robin is going to, he's going to step into that leadership role and become the leader tomorrow. But, I hope that before the end of season 1, he does end up taking the mantle, becoming the leader as Aqualad promised. But if that doesn't happen, that's fine by me. I'm perfectly fine with, Aqualad remaining the team leader. I think he does a great job at it, but I want to see Robin step up. Like Robin is, in my opinion, he is the true team leader. And so, we'll just need to see him develop a little bit more into kind of that leadership role. And hopefully that happens sooner than later. Now, in terms of Artemis, I think that's another big plot point that I'm kind of theorizing will shape, shape out throughout the course of the next, couple episodes, at least the second half of the season. But, I suspect that if Artemis is in fact the mole, as it was kind of teased at the beginning of the season, I think she'll potentially get kicked off the team, and the team will find themselves in a situation where Artemis she'll be the only one that can help them. And that will kind of be the way that she kind of works her way back into the squad, kind of a redemption arc for the character. And I feel like the reason, if she is the mole, I feel like the reason she will portray the team is probably due to some deep family ties. I feel like that's something they've been hinting at as well, is that this is a character with a troubled past that has had to make decisions that she may not necessarily be proud of. Maybe she's tied in with the family and she doesn't know which direction to go, but ultimately she's gonna choose the Young Justice squad. At least that's my prediction. And in terms of the overall plot, guys, I mean, I feel like it's going to be some sort of invasion, or they're going to try to annihilate the world. Maybe they're building some sort of machine. I don't know. Maybe Superboy is the key somehow and could the creation of that machine. Maybe he's the pillar. Something. I don't know. In terms of the story, I'm still a little vague on it, right? I'm still curious, but it's not too confusing to the point where I'm uninterested. I think within the next couple episodes, we'll have to wait and see exactly how things plan out. But, those are kind of my general predictions. I feel like the team is strong. Some of the things obviously one of the big things I want to see is I want to see the team continue to work together. We haven't really seen a lot of full team composition outside of the beginning of the season. And we saw a little bit in, I think, episode 13, where we see the team work together in the jungle. But outside of those episodes, we've seen a lot of, duo teams, which I think has been really cool to see those different dynamics of these different splits of the Young Justice squad. And, but I would love to see them all come together. And I'm hoping that that's going to happen sooner than later. But again, it's one of those things where we'll just have to wait and see. Overall, guys, I've genuinely, truly enjoyed the first half of this season. Every episode has provided some strong character progression. Every episode has felt meaningful. It has felt like it's building up to a much bigger picture, one that I hope will reveal itself, within the next couple episodes in this, the second half of season 1. And I feel like there's a lot more to look forward to and a lot more surprises. I think the humor in this show has been punchy, but it's not too much humor to where it's a comedy, right? I feel like this show still focuses on the main thing, and still tries to continue to push towards a story that has surprised me in really every turn. I've loved this season so far. I think it's great. I won't give it a 10 out of 10 just yet. We still got 13 episodes left to go, and I hope you guys will join me along for the ride. I'm busy working probably right now, pumping these episodes out as quickly as I can. It's a process. It takes time, and I want to present, you guys the best product each and every time with the best energy and the best enthusiasm for each and every episode. So if you guys do like these videos, dropping a like on this video is a great free way to support the channel. Comment down below. Out of the 13 episodes we've seen so far, what has been your favorite one? I personally think episode 9 has been great, and I loved all the reactions and all the votes that you guys dropped for the best episode. It's hard to say which one's really, if there's one that I like the least. I've loved them all so much. They've been so great. I mean, this show's been awesome. It really has, and it has so many layers to its plot and its characters, and I can't wait to see what happens next. But again, guys, that's all for me. This is my mid-season review. I apologize if it's a little scuffed. I don't really do reviews, so, just try to get out my thoughts on the first half of the season in the most concise way I possibly could. So forgive me if there's a bunch of cuts and, cutting out the boring parts of this episode. But yeah, I just wanted to take this time before we really jump into the second half of the season to give you my thoughts. But I'd love to know your thoughts without spoilers on the first half of season 1. Let me know what you guys thought of the first 13 episodes. And yeah, I can't wait to share the rest of season 1 with you guys. But as always, guys, that's all for me. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you're safe. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.